I don't talk much about my time contracting in Iraq, not because I saw too much or got traumatized like people expect, but because no one really gets it unless they were there. The weird boredom, the long stretches of nothing punctuated by quick bursts of absolute chaos, and sometimes things you just don't have a name for. This happened back in '07. I was working private security for a logistics outfit. We weren't officially Blackwater, but it was one of their offshoots. Same gear, same people, different patch. I was attached to a convoy detail that moved fuel and equipment between camps. I won't name where exactly. If you've been there, you'll know the kind of place I'm talking about. Dusty, sun-bleached, tucked out of sight of anything resembling civilization. Just tan tents, blast walls, and a bunch of guys trying not to think about how hot it was. That particular night, we were posted in a small outpost outside the wire, babysitting some fuel tankers. We weren't scheduled to roll out until morning. There were 4 of us on overwatch, 2 on top of a makeshift tower, 1 in the command truck, and me walking the perimeter. I didn't mind taking the solo foot patrol. It was quiet, and honestly, I liked the space. Out there, it's not silence exactly, but something close. The wind picks up at night, real dry, carries a kind of whisper through the sand and wire. You get used to it. Around 02:30, I was making my loop behind the fuel trucks, walking slow, listening for anything out of place. Every now and then, I'd stop and just scan the horizon through my NVGs. The goggles make everything that weird grainy green, and your depth perception is shot to hell, but it's better than walking blind. I was maybe halfway through my loop when I caught a smell. That's what hit me first. You ever smell wet dog on a hot day? Mix that with something rotten, meat gone off in the cooler, in this weird metallic undertone, almost like rust. That's the closest I can get to describing it. The second I smelled it, I stopped walking. It wasn't drifting in on the wind. It was close. It clung, heavy and sour, like it was waiting for me to breathe it in. I clicked off my safety out of habit, scanned around again, slow. There was nothing out there, just the trucks, the dunes, and that emptiness stretching out past the wire. But I knew I wasn't alone. I mean, really knew it. It was the kind of thing you feel in your back teeth. There was a small drainage culvert about 30 feet ahead, built into the base of a berm that ringed the outpost. I thought maybe a dog or jackal crawled in there to die. That happens sometimes. Wild animals, desperate for shade or water, ending up closer than they should. I started walking toward it. About 10 feet out, I stopped again. Something was crouched just beside the opening. Not in the culvert, but beside it, behind a hump of sand. I hadn't seen it move, but I could make out the silhouette now. Just barely. It was low to the ground, hunched with its arms or maybe legs bent at a strange angle. I thought it might be a hyena at first, but it was too big, and it wasn't shaped right. Its back looked too long. The proportions were wrong. I lifted my rifle and turned on my IR laser to mark it for the tower guys. But the second I did, the shape moved. It didn't bolt or run, it unfolded. That's the best word for it. Like it had been crouching in a position that no living thing should be able to hold. And now it was standing. Except it wasn't fully upright. More like a crouched person ready to sprint. Shoulders were hunched forward, limbs long and lanky. Arms, yes, they were arms, not front legs, hanging down past its knees. Even in the dark, I could see its chest rising and falling fast, like it was excited. It turned its head towards me, slowly. The movement was deliberate, not like it was startled. It had been watching me, and now it wanted me to know that. I've seen insurgents high out of their minds, wild dogs tearing through garbage pits, even a guy walking into traffic with a grenade taped to his chest. But nothing ever made my body lock up the way that thing did. I couldn't raise my weapon, couldn't speak, just stared. Its head was shaped almost like a dog's, elongated snout, narrow jaw, but the ears were too small, the eyes too big. I remember that most clearly, the eyes, reflective like an animal's, but not in the way you expect. The whites were showing. The pupils were large and pitch black, and when the tower's floodlight kicked on, probably someone saw my laser. They flashed like glass catching sunlight. That must have startled it because it bolted sideways, faster than anything that size should be able to move. I didn't hear it growl. I didn't hear it make a sound at all. It was just gone. One blink it was there, the next it wasn't. Just the disturbed sand where it had crouched, and that foul smell still hanging in the air. The floodlight swept the area for a few seconds. The guys up top radioed asking what I saw, if we had movement. I told them it was an animal, but even I didn't believe that. I finished my shift in silence and didn't sleep a wink the rest of the night. The next day I checked the culvert and surrounding area in daylight. There were prints, not boot prints, not tire tracks, something else. A weird, almost hand-like pattern, but too large and deep to be a human, like claws that pressed into the dirt. I photographed them, but later that day when I pulled the SD card from the camera, it was blank, like it had never recorded anything at all. I didn't tell the rest of the team what I really saw. They already joked that I was too serious, too twitchy. If I started talking about werewolves in the desert, they'd find a way to get me rotated home. But that wasn't a werewolf, it wasn't a dog, and it wasn't a man either. It was something that knew how to move like all three. Something that had watched us for who knows how long, just waiting for someone to notice. Every once in a while when I think about it, I wonder how often it came close, how many times it skirted the edge of our wire. The motion sensors didn't trigger. The dogs on base didn't bark, but it was there. I know it was. I ended my contract early a few months later. Couldn't shake the feeling. Even after I got home, there were nights I'd wake up sweating. Sure, I smelled that same foul, coppery rot drifting through the window. I haven't gone back, and I don't talk about it with anyone who was there. But I think about that thing more often than I'd like to admit. How it looked at me, like it wasn't curious, like it wasn't afraid, like it knew exactly what I was, and that it didn't care. This happened just before sunrise today, and I still haven't wrapped my head around it. I've got a small farm in northeast Nebraska, nothing major, corn, a few soybeans, and a dozen head of cattle. I run it mostly on my own since my dad passed. It's early September, which means harvest is coming up, so I've been checking the fields every morning to prepare. This morning around 5:45 a.m., I grabbed my thermos and walked the south field like I always do. There was a low fog hanging over everything. Nothing unusual for this time of year, but thicker than normal. Everything was quiet, no birds, no bugs. Just the soft crunch of my boots and the distant sound of the barn roof ticking from the overnight dew. About halfway down the field, I caught a smell that stopped me in my tracks. It was this awful, sour, wet dog meets iron kind of stink. Not manure, not skunk, but something different. It hit hard like it had been waiting in the still air. I looked around thinking maybe a coyote or raccoon had died somewhere, but I didn't see anything at first. Then I noticed a wide swath of broken corn stalks a few rows over. I stepped between the rows to get a better look, and sure enough, something had gone through them, big, heavy, and fast. Stalks were snapped off at chest height, trampled in this zigzag pattern, like whatever it was had been moving erratically. I thought maybe a buck had gotten tangled and panicked, but I didn't see hoof marks, just matted down dirt and wide impressions that didn't make sense. And the smell was stronger there, almost made my eyes water. That's when I heard it, just ahead, maybe 20 yards into the field. A low, raspy breathing. It wasn't steady, like whatever was making it was holding its breath, then letting out small, sharp exhales. I crouched, trying to stay still, and that's when something moved. I didn't see the whole thing. It was just a flash of movement, dark against the lighter mist, tall, fast, and upright. Whatever it was stood on two legs and cut through the corn like it wasn't even there. The rows swayed and snapped in its wake. It moved toward the edge of the property where the corn meets a small patch of woods. I stepped out of the road to follow it with my eyes, and for a split second, maybe 2 seconds, I saw it clear. It was about 7 feet tall, lanky but broad across the chest, covered in dark, coarse fur. Its legs bent backwards like a dog's, but the arms were long, and the way it moved, there was something unnatural about it. Too smooth, like it didn't belong here. Its head was shaped like a shepherd's, long snout, tall ears, but bulkier, like a wolf that had been stretched upward. I didn't see its face, not really. Just a side profile before it vanished into the tree line at the back of my property. The corn snapped for a few seconds more, then it was gone, and the smell went with it. I stood there for a long time, trying to make sense of what I'd seen. I'm not a superstitious guy. I've hunted most of my life. I've seen wolves, coyotes, bears, even a mountain lion once years back. Nothing moves like that. Nothing runs like that on 2 legs, arms pumping like a man, but with a body that doesn't match anything in the real world. After it was gone, I checked the area. The broken path through the corn was about 5 feet wide, too wide for any deer. There were no hoof prints, no paws, just deep impressions rounder than human, but not quite paw-shaped either. I didn't take pictures. I was too stunned to think that clearly. I wish I had, though. I haven't told my neighbors. Hell, I haven't even told my girlfriend. What do I even say? That I saw a werewolf running through my cornfields before sunrise? All I know is I'm not going back out there tomorrow alone. I've lived on this land for 30 years. Never once have I felt watched. But now I lock the door before the sun's even down. I don't post stuff like this, but this happened in 2019, and I haven't been able to shake it. I've told 1 or 2 friends and they laughed it off. I guess I would too if I hadn't seen it myself. Back then I was driving solo through northern Mexico. Not way down deep, just a few hours south of the border, near a town I'll call San Madero. I'd crossed over at the recommendation of a friend who said the food and culture were amazing. He wasn't wrong. Super friendly locals, no tourists, cheap everything. I had dinner, wandered the plaza, and got a room at a tiny family-run hotel off a dirt road. Around 11:30 that night, I couldn't sleep. It was too hot inside, even with the ceiling fan on full blast. I figured I'd go for a short walk, maybe grab a cold drink from the OXXO I'd seen when I drove in. The town was quiet, just a few dogs barking in the distance, and some music drifting out of a house down the block. I was maybe 3 streets from the hotel when I started feeling watched. It wasn't just nerves. Every time I took a step, it felt like something out there responded to it. Like it was matching my movements. The kind of feeling that makes your neck stiff. There weren't any people out, but there were a couple of stray dogs digging through trash or lounging near fences. Normal for the area. I'd passed this vacant lot, just dirt and dead grass with a chain-link fence that had half collapsed. And that's when I heard the sound. Not barking, not growling. It was this low, weird chuffing noise like a breath being forced through clenched teeth. I thought maybe one of the dogs was sick or injured. I slowed down and looked into the lot, and at first I didn't see anything. Just some trash, an old bike tire, and a plastic chair flipped over. Then it moved. It had been squatting behind a rusted-out oil drum, almost folded into itself. The second I looked its way, it stood, fast, way too fast. I didn't see it rise up so much as uncoil, like it had been waiting. I swear to God it was shaped like a man, but wrong. Tall, well over 6 feet, but super lean, almost gaunt. Its arms hung low and its shoulders were hunched in this unnatural way. I remember its head most clearly. Narrow snout, pointed ears. The way its eyes reflected the streetlight, greenish yellow like an animal's, but with too much intensity, like it was thinking. At first I thought it was a dude in a costume, like a prank or a meth head in a fursuit. But then it moved again, stepping out from behind the drum, and I saw its legs. They were bent backward like a dog's hind legs, but longer, like stilts almost. It walked hunched with its arms slightly swinging, but silent, completely silent. I froze. My body just stopped listening. It was like my brain was screaming to run, but my legs couldn't catch up. It didn't come at me, it just watched. I took one slow step backward, and it tilted its head. Not quick or twitchy, but slow and smooth, like it was curious, like it didn't expect me to move. Then it huffed again, that same chuffing breath, louder this time, and it crouched like it was about to leap. That broke whatever was locking me in place. I turned and ran. I didn't care how stupid I looked. I sprinted 3 blocks straight, didn't even check if it was behind me until I saw the front door of the hotel. I slammed it shut and locked it and just stood there, soaked in sweat, shaking like hell. I watched from the window for maybe 10 minutes. Nothing. Just the still night and that distant barking again. No one else seemed to notice anything. No lights flicked on. No one yelled. It was like whatever it was didn't make enough noise to matter. Next morning, I told the guy running the hotel that I thought I saw some kind of weird animal in the vacant lot. I didn't say what. He didn't laugh. He just kind of nodded once and said in Spanish, "There's a reason we don't walk too far past the plaza at night." I left that day, drove back across the border and didn't stop until I hit Tucson. I know what I saw. I don't care if people think I'm making it up. It wasn't a stray dog. It wasn't a dude in a costume. It watched me. It breathed like a thing that had lungs. And it was waiting behind that fence like it knew someone would pass. If you're ever in a small town in northern Mexico and feel like someone's watching you after dark, trust that feeling. This happened last fall and I haven't told anyone outside my roommate. I'm posting here because honestly I still can't explain what I saw, and it's been eating at me since. I'm a college student at the University of Idaho, and my family has a small farm about 30 minutes outside of Sandpoint, up near the base of the Selkirks. Nothing big, just chickens, goats, a garden, that sort of thing. I go up a few times a month to help out, especially when my dad's working nights. The sighting happened on a Friday night in late October. I had spent the day up at the farm helping my mom move firewood and fix some fencing. It was already dark when I left, probably around 8:45 p.m. The drive back to Moscow was mostly 2-lane highways and empty stretches of road with dense forests on either side. No cell reception in half the spots. Locals know to watch for deer, especially after dusk. About 20 minutes into my drive, I was on one of those winding forest roads, just past a spot locals call Miller's Hollow. I was doing maybe 50, just me, my high beams, and nothing but trees. I remember thinking how quiet everything was, even for that time of night. That's when I saw it. It was on the side of the road, right where the forest thins into a gravel pull-off. At first, I thought it was a person. It was standing upright, maybe 10 feet off the edge of the road. But something about it was wrong. It was tall, easily over 6'5", and broad across the shoulders, but its body was shaped strange, almost too narrow at the waist, with long arms that hung low, like past the hips. The head looked like a dog's, pointed ears, elongated snout. But it wasn't slouched like a four-legged animal standing up. It was balanced, like that was its natural posture. Its fur, or hair, was dark, almost black, but patchy in places. I could see skin underneath, around the neck and shoulders. Its eyes reflected yellow in my high beams. What really made my blood run cold was the way it turned its head to watch me. It didn't flinch or jerk back like most animals do when a car rushes past. It just followed me with its eyes, smoothly like a person would. I passed it maybe 2 seconds flat, but that image is burned into my brain. I slowed down after that, like instinctively hit the brakes. But I didn't dare turn around. My gut told me that would be a bad idea. I kept checking my rearview mirror even though I knew I wouldn't see anything. I made it back to my apartment around 10 and sat in the parking lot for a solid 5 minutes, just trying to calm down. I told myself it was probably just a trick of the light, maybe a bear that stood up as I passed. But no matter how I tried to frame it, it doesn't make sense. Bears don't look at you like that. They don't stand that still, that confidently. And that face wasn't a bear's. I haven't driven that road at night since, not alone. I've gone back during the day and even stopped at the same pull-off. There was nothing unusual there. No prints, no broken branches, just forest. I know what I saw. I don't care if people believe me or not. Something was out there, upright and watching. And whatever it wasn't afraid of me. It knew I saw it, and it didn't care. This happened in the fall of 2021, and I haven't really told anyone besides my brother and my girlfriend. I live in a rural part of northeast Ohio, about 20 minutes outside of Wooster. It's all back roads, cornfields, patches of woods, and a few old farmhouses like mine. I've lived here for a little over 6 years now. It's quiet, peaceful, and exactly what I wanted after spending a decade in Cleveland. The house itself is old, built in the 1930s. It's been updated over the years, but the bones are original. I've got about 5 acres of land, most of it open field and trees toward the back. There's a long gravel driveway that leads from the road to the house, maybe 200 feet or so. My bedroom is upstairs, and from my window I can see the whole driveway and the woods beyond. I've got 2 dogs, Scout and Lily. Scout's a German Shepherd mix and Lily's a retriever. Good dogs, protective but not aggressive. They're inside dogs, but I let them out into the yard before bed every night around 10. They usually sniff around, do their business, and come right back in. That night, though, they didn't want to go out. That was the first weird thing. I opened the back door like I always do and called them, and they just stood there in the kitchen, tails low, ears back, kind of huddled together like they were unsure. I thought maybe there was a coyote on the fields or something. That's happened before, so I grabbed a flashlight and stepped out into the porch to check. I didn't see anything, but I noticed how still everything was. No wind, no crickets, no rustling in the trees, just dead silence. You get used to a certain background noise out here, and when it's gone, it makes you feel like you're in a vacuum. Scout finally came out with me, but he stuck right by my side. Lily wouldn't even leave the doorway. I walked around a bit, scanned the tree line with a flashlight. Didn't see anything and figured maybe it was nothing. They eventually went out, but it was quick, like sprinted to the edge of the yard, did their business and ran right back. That's not normal for them. I locked up, turned off the lights downstairs, and went to bed a little bit before 11. I was half asleep when I heard Scout growling from downstairs. Not barking, but growling, low, deep, and steady. I sat up, listened, and then I heard Lily whine. That got me moving. I grabbed the small .22 I keep in my bedroom just in case and went down. Scout was at the front door, ears up and body stiff. Lily was pacing near the living room window, tail low and whining. I turned on the porch light and looked out, but didn't see anything. Still, the way the dogs were acting, I knew something was out there. I stood at the front door for a while, peeking through the side window. About 15 minutes went by. The dogs settled slightly and I figured whatever it was had moved on. I turned off the porch light, went back upstairs, and sat on the edge of the bed for a minute, listening. That's when I saw it. I happened to glance out the window above my bed. My bedroom faces the driveway and the woods at the edge of my property. There's a single floodlight mounted on the utility pole at the very end of the driveway, right where the gravel meets the edge of the woods. It's not a bright light, more yellow than white, but enough to cast a soft glow over the gravel and the brush around it. Something was standing just under it. At first, I thought it was a deer. The shape was similar, tall, lean, but then I realized it was upright, standing on 2 legs. It was facing my direction just past the reach of the light. The top half of it was partly in shadow, but I could make out a head, pointed with ears on top. It wasn't round like a bear's. Its ears stuck up like a wolf or German shepherd. It had a long torso, narrow waist, and arms that hung a little too low, ending in what I swear looked like hands. It just stood there motionless. I blinked a few times, thinking maybe I was imagining it. But it didn't move, not even a sway or a twitch. It looked solid and real. The scariest part was how still it was. I don't know how else to put it. It was like a statue. I watched it for at least 30 seconds and it didn't shift once. And then, without warning, it turned its head. It didn't step forward. It didn't lurch or move. It just turned its head, smooth and slow, and looked right at me. I dropped to the floor out of view of the window. My heart was pounding. I didn't even think to grab my phone. I just lay there for a while trying to stay quiet. I didn't hear anything. No footsteps, no dogs barking, nothing. I finally peeked up again after a minute or two and it was gone. The light still casting the same circle at the end of the drive, but whatever had been standing in it wasn't there anymore. I stayed awake the rest of the night. The dogs eventually settled down sometime around 2 or 3 a.m., and I finally dozed off around dawn. The next morning, I walked down the driveway to where I'd seen it. There were marks in the gravel, like something heavy had stood there and scuffed around. Not quite footprints, but indentations. Whatever it wasn't light. I checked the trail cam I keep mounted on a tree facing the woods. It didn't pick up anything. Battery was dead. It had been working earlier that week. I check it every Sunday. But somehow it was drained. I haven't seen anything since. The dogs are back to normal. But every time I go to bed, I find myself checking that window, just in case. I know what I saw. I'm not saying it was a werewolf or anything out of a movie, but it wasn't a coyote, and it sure as hell wasn't a bear. Bears don't stand like that. They don't look at you like that. This thing had presence, intelligence, like it was watching me the whole time and just waiting. I'm not looking for attention or trying to convince anyone. I just need to write it down somewhere. Maybe someone else has seen something similar around here. If you have, I'd like to know I'm not the only one. So for context, I've always been a rational guy, engineer by trade. I've lived in Montana my whole life, and I spend a lot of time outdoors, hunting, hiking, fishing, all of it. I've heard just about every local legend, campfire story, and cryptid rumor there is, and I've always chalked it up to exaggeration or overactive imaginations. I never believed in Dogmen, Bigfoot, skinwalkers, any of that, until last September. This happened about an hour and a half southwest of Helena, in the Helena, Lewis and Clark National Forest. There's a trail I like that's not too well known, quiet, scenic, and it branches off into a few game trails if you want to get off the beaten path. I won't give the exact spot for reasons that'll become obvious. That day, I got to the trailhead around 2:30 p.m. It was partly cloudy and warm for fall. I had no particular goal other than to get some miles in, breathe the air, and shake off a stressful week. I wasn't camping, just hiking light, with water, bear spray, a fixed blade, and my Glock, standard for the area. The first couple of hours were uneventful. I was a few miles in when I noticed a side trail I hadn't seen before. It dipped down along a ravine and into thicker timber. Figured I'd explore a bit before looping back. After maybe 20 minutes on that trail, something shifted. Not around me exactly, but in me. I got this creeping feeling in my gut. Not fear, not yet. More like a subtle weight in my stomach. A low-level discomfort I couldn't place. The best way I can describe it is that my instinct started whispering, "Watch yourself." I slowed my pace, scanned more often, hand closer to my hip. I've been in the woods all my life, and I trust my instincts out there more than I trust a map. I wasn't hearing or seeing anything that should have made me nervous. No movement in the brush, no obvious tracks. But still, something felt off. Then I saw the tree, big pine maybe 60 feet tall, with deep claw marks on the trunk about 5.5 feet up. 5 long gouges, vertical, almost perfectly spaced. At first I figured it was from a black bear marking territory, but the shape was wrong. The spacing was too even, too human-like. And the depth, whatever made them had strength behind it. That's when the discomfort started turning into unease. I moved on, but now I was tuned in. Every step, every turn, I was alert. Not scared exactly, just highly aware. After another 10 minutes or so, I came around a bend and heard something move to my right down in the brush. Something heavy. It wasn't a small animal. I stopped and waited. It didn't continue. Just a single thump of movement, like someone or something shifting position. I scanned the tree line but didn't see anything. Eventually I kept going. The trail turned upward a bit, toward a low ridge that flattened out into a clearing. I crested the ridge just as the sun dipped low enough that the shadows started stretching across the forest floor. That's when I saw it. At first I thought it was a stump or some weirdly shaped tree. It was standing still at the edge of the trees on the far side of the clearing, maybe 40 yards off. But as I shifted my position, it became clear it wasn't part of the landscape. It moved, subtly, just enough to shift behind a trunk, like it was trying to stay hidden. I froze. Every part of me was on alert now. Then it stepped out. It was upright, tall, well over 7 feet. Broad shoulders, long arms, tapered waist. It looked like a man and an animal blended into one, covered in dark, coarse fur. Its legs bent wrong, jointed like a canine's, but it stood solidly upright. The arms hung low and ended in hands, big ones with fingers, not paws. But the head, God, the head was pure nightmare fuel. Long snout, pointed ears, a wide jaw, like a massive wolf. The eyes were amber-colored, and they locked on me the moment it moved into view. And I swear it looked right at me. For about 5 seconds we stared at each other. I didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't even think. My whole body locked up. Then its lips curled back slightly. Not a snarl, something weirder, closer to a smirk. Like it knew I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Like it was enjoying it. That's when the fear hit, pure adrenaline. I backed away slowly at first, then turned and jogged until I was well off the ridge and down the slope. I didn't run full out. I didn't want to look like prey, but I moved quick, all the way back to the main trail, then to the parking area. I didn't stop until I saw my truck. Once I was inside with the doors locked, I just sat there, sweating and trying to process what happened. I didn't tell anyone at first. What do you even say? Later that week I went back. Stupid, I know. I left a trail cam near that marked tree, a cheap one, just to see. I checked it after a few days. There was nothing on the camera. It had been knocked over. Since then, I haven't been back on that part of the trail. I still hike, but not alone, and not in that area. Before that day, I would have laughed at you if you told me Dogmen were real. Hell, I would have argued the biology doesn't work. But I know what I saw. I don't care if no one believes me. It was real. It stood upright. It watched me. It wanted me to see it. And when I did, it looked pleased. That's not an animal. That's something else entirely. I'm not into posting stuff online, but I can't stop thinking about what happened. I work nights at a salvage yard outside of Pittsburgh. I'm not going to name the company, but if you've driven I-79, you've probably passed it. It's a fenced-in, mostly automated yard with a small crew. And every now and then I pull solo shifts to monitor the cameras and keep an eye on incoming drop-offs. Last Thursday it was me, one forklift driver until midnight, and then silence. I had the 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift. It rained earlier in the evening, just enough to make everything slick and muddy. The cameras had some raindrops on the lenses, so I had to do a quick walk around 2:15 a.m. to make sure everything was clear. We get occasional scrap thieves, mostly tweakers looking to rip out copper wiring. Management likes a physical patrol every few hours. I grabbed a flashlight and started my walk. The yard is massive, mostly car frames stacked into rows, with big open muddy paths for loaders to come through. There's a narrow side area behind the main stacks where old shipping containers sit. Most are empty or filled with busted parts. That's where this happened. I was walking past the third container when I heard a thud. Not metal on metal, more like a dull impact. I thought maybe something had fallen off a pile, or an animal had gotten in. Strays do that. I angled the flashlight toward the sound and immediately saw the container door was cracked open about 4 inches. We don't leave them open, ever. I stopped, crouched a little out of instinct. The air suddenly smelled wrong, like wet fur, iron, and the sour, almost mildewy rot. I thought about radioing it in, then remembered I was the only one on shift. The guy working before me had clocked out 4 hours ago. It was just me. The night supervisor doesn't even stay on site anymore due to budget cuts. So if I wanted to check it out, I had to do it myself. I figured it was probably just a raccoon or a dog trying to get out of the rain. I pushed the door slowly and aimed my flashlight inside. There was something in the back corner of the container. At first, I thought it was just a big dog. It was hunched facing away like it was gnawing on something. I saw the back legs first, long, narrow, and angled weird. Then it shifted slightly, and I realized I was looking at something with shoulders. Broad, almost human-shaped shoulders. The torso was lean but long, too long, and its spine stuck out in sharp ridges under the skin. The fur was dark, mottled, and patchy like it had mange. I froze. My light must have caught its eyes because it stopped moving and turned its head. That's when I realized this thing wasn't on all fours. It was squatting like a man would, knees up near its chest, long arms resting in front of it. When its head turned, I saw a snout, narrow like a Doberman's, but its mouth hung open slightly, panting slow. Its eyes reflected gold, not like animal shine, more like mirror glass catching the beam of my flashlight. We locked eyes for maybe 2 seconds. That's all. Then it stood up. It didn't lunge, didn't growl. It just rose, slow and steady like it wasn't in any kind of hurry. It had to duck slightly under the container ceiling, and those are over 8 feet tall. Its arms hung almost to its knees, and its hands were long-fingered and curled slightly inward, like claws it didn't quite bother using yet. I backed up without realizing it, almost dropped the light. Then it moved, not toward me, but out. It took a step forward, then turned its body sideways, slipping through the half-open container door like it had done it 100 times before. It had to rotate its shoulders slightly to squeeze through, and when it did, I could see just how broad its chest was. This thing wasn't thin like a starving animal. It was lean, sure, but powerful, like it was built to run or chase. Once it was outside the container, it paused, maybe 15 feet from me, just standing there in the open under the yard's floodlight spill-off. It didn't blink, didn't make a sound. Then, in one fluid motion, it dropped to all fours and darted sideways into the shadows between stacked car husks. Silent, absolutely silent. No metal creaks, no gravel crunching. It was like it had mapped the place out. I turned and ran. I didn't care how loud I was. I sprinted 3 blocks straight. Didn't even check if it was still behind me until I saw the front door of the office. I slammed it shut and locked it and just stood there, soaked in sweat, shaking like hell. I watched from the window for maybe 10 minutes. Nothing else moved, just a still night and that distant hum of machines cooling down. No alerts on the cameras. Whatever it was had either vanished into the blind spots or moved on. Next morning, I walked out there with the foreman. I didn't say what I saw, just told him I thought someone broke in. The container door was shut by then, but there were prints in the mud. Not boots, not paws, something in between, elongated with pads like a dog, but a spread like fingers. Some of the marks had claw tips. The foreman saw them and just said it was a stray, maybe a coyote. I haven't taken another solo night shift since. I told them I was having some sleep issues. They let me switch to days, but I keep thinking about how it moved, how it watched me like it understood I wasn't supposed to see it, like it was more annoyed than startled. And the worst part, when it passed through the narrow door, it didn't hesitate. It knew exactly how much space it needed, like it had done it before, and maybe would do it again. I used to think the scariest things happened way out in the woods, out where the stars burn brighter than streetlights, and there's no one to hear you scream. But now I'm not so sure. Sometimes the worst things come right up to the edge of the places we think are safe. They stay just outside the light, just quiet enough to be real. This happened about 6 years ago, late September. I was living on the outskirts of a mid-sized city, somewhere with strip malls and breweries, but if you drove 10 minutes in the wrong direction, you were in cracked pavement and woods thick enough to swallow a truck. I just started working for a small HVAC company. I was the new guy, which meant I got handed a lot of off-hour jobs. That night, it was a call to check on a unit at a rental property near the edge of Franklin Road. It's an old industrial area, mostly warehouses and a few fenced-off parking lots filled with rusted-out trailers. The property owner met me before dark, handed me a key and left, said the last tenant skipped out, but the unit inside was still running full blast. I parked around back, unlocked the chain link gate, and stepped into the yard. The place looked like a junkyard that had given up. Old tires, half-buried pallets, weeds as tall as my chest. There were woods right behind the fence line. Not deep forest, but thick enough that I couldn't see past the first few trees. The sun dipped below the horizon fast, and the air went still in that weird way it does sometimes when the temperature drops too fast. I had a flashlight, a headlamp, and my tool bag. No big deal. I'd done dozens of jobs like it. The back door to the warehouse opened with a screech like something was dying. The inside smelled like wet drywall and rodent droppings. I did a quick sweep, just a big empty space, scattered with old shelving and trash. The HVAC unit was tucked into a wall cage halfway up a stairwell. I flipped the circuit, checked the fuse, and started the standard procedure. That's when I heard it, a crunch, footsteps, slow and heavy just outside. I froze at first. I thought maybe someone else had come through the gate. I turned off my headlamp and crouched near the window that overlooked the yard. I couldn't see anyone, but something had moved past the corner of the building. I caught a flash of it, a shape. It was upright, dark, and tall. I remember this because it wasn't just tall, it was thin, lanky. It moved with a strange fluid gait, like each limb was bending just a little too far. I stayed still for a full minute. My heart was pounding hard enough to make my chest throb. I reached for my phone and realized I'd left it in the truck. Then I heard another step. It was closer now. I backed away from the window, slowly, and pressed my back to the far wall of the stairwell. I had no weapons, no real way out except the way I came in. Then I heard the chain link gate rattle. Not open, not slam, just rattle, like something tall had brushed past it. Then silence. I inched toward the loading dock and slowly pushed it open just enough to peek outside. The floodlight near the truck was still on. The gravel glowed under it, empty. But at the edge of the woods, just beyond where the light ended, something stood there. Its eyes caught the light first, and that's what froze me. They reflected back. Not red, not yellow, just this dull silvery shine. Not like a cat's, not like any animal I've ever seen. It was tall, taller than me by at least 1.5 feet. It wasn't standing fully upright, more like it was hunched slightly forward. But its head, That's what got me. It was shaped wrong, elongated like a canine's, but too narrow. Its mouth was partly open, and I swear I saw it breathing, slow and steady, like it wasn't even remotely afraid. Then it took a step forward. It didn't rush me, didn't growl. But the second it moved, I shut the door again and backed into the dark warehouse. Crouched low, every part of me screaming to get out. I waited another few minutes, thinking maybe it would leave. Then I heard the metal rack topple over from inside. It wasn't in the woods anymore. I ran. I left my bag, left my tools, bolted for the side door and sprinted toward my truck. The gravel felt like it was grabbing at my feet. I didn't even look back until I was in the driver's seat with the door slammed shut. And even then, I almost wish I hadn't looked. Because at the edge of the building, just past the broken down shipping container, it was standing there again, watching me. Same dull eyes, same steady breath. It didn't chase me, didn't move. But as I drove off, it turned and disappeared behind the corner like it knew its job was done. I reported the unit issue but never went back. Told the office the place was structurally unsafe. No one even argued. I never told anyone what I really saw, not until now. And I've never shaken the feeling that it let me leave. Like I didn't interrupt it. I just wandered too close, and it decided I wasn't worth the mess. I still work HVAC, still take late shifts sometimes, but I don't go near Franklin Road after dark. And if I do, I keep my eyes away from the tree line. Because some things don't need to be deep in the woods to be wrong. Some things are already here. I don't usually talk about this. Hell, I barely admit it to myself. But something happened a few months ago and it's been eating at me ever since. I live in a small town, nothing fancy. Lots of woods around, old farms, the usual. There's this stretch called Old Mill Road, about 3 miles out of town. It's mostly empty, especially at night. The kind of place where headlights are your only company. One night I was driving home late from a friend's place. Maybe 11:30 p.m. The roads were slick from a light rain. I wasn't in a rush, just wanted to get home and crash. About halfway down Old Mill Road, something caught my eye near the tree line. At first, I thought it was a deer. It was standing still just off the road. I slowed down. It was tall, like a really tall dog, or something bigger. Its fur was dark, almost black. The shape was all wrong though. Its limbs were too long and thin. The way it held itself wasn't like any animal I've ever seen. Then it turned its head toward me. I saw its eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Not the yellow or green you get from a deer or a raccoon. These were a deep amber, almost human-like in their intensity. I froze. The creature didn't move. It just watched me. Its mouth was slightly open, panting, but it didn't bark or growl. It just looked curious. I reached for my phone but remembered it was in my jacket pocket in the back of the car. I was just stuck staring at this thing. Suddenly it lowered its head and crouched down like it was about to spring. My heart hammered in my chest. I slammed the gas and sped away. For a moment, I thought I saw it drop down onto all fours and slip backward between the trees, disappearing into the shadows. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I told a coworker who laughed it off as a coyote or a stray dog. But I know what I saw. It wasn't any dog I've ever known. It was something else.